Well, let's turn to the elections in the DRC. Moise Katumbi, one of the main opposition candidates in the DRC presidential election, has added his voice to calls for the 20th December vote to be annulled because of massive fraud. Katumbi's statement came as another group of opposition candidates who had called for a rerun of the election on Wednesday wrote to the governor of the capital, Kinshasa, to say they will hold a joint protest on Wednesday, 27th December, over the election. In a sign of growing concern over the aftermath of the election, 13 embassies in Kinshasa, including those of Germany, France and Canada, released a joint statement on Saturday calling for restraint. Delays during Wednesday's election led to an extension of voting, which some opposition candidates and independent observers said compromises the credibility of the vote. Congo's election commission, known as CENI, has acknowledged there were delays on the 20th of December. That meant some polling stations failed to open, but denied the credibility of the election was compromised by extending some voting. Full provisional election results are expected by the 31st of December. Well, let's cross over now to CGTN's Chris Ochambringa. He's joining us live from the capital, Kinshasa. Chris, foreign embassies reiterating calls there for calm. What is the latest on the election and the vote tallying process, and what's the electoral body saying so far?
Yes, Beatrice. So these foreign embassies called on Congolese to remain calm as vote counting goes on, because there have been some outbreak of protests, especially in Kinshasa. That's after the Electoral Commission announced the provisional results on Friday, which came from voting in the diaspora. President Felix Tshisekedi had a comfortable lead, and some of the supporters of the rival opposition candidates decided to stage a protest on the outskirts of the city. Some young men blocked a road, and they were threatening to beat up motorists who were plying that route that leads to the airport. And so there's a lot of tension, and that's why they have been calling for calm. The Electoral Commission released the first batch of the provisional results on Friday from the diaspora, and they had promised to release another partial results on Saturday, but that didn't happen. They postponed it to Sunday. So we're waiting for them to release the results that are coming from other parts of the provinces in the DRC. And what we have heard is that voting was officially supposed to end on Thursday, but it went on in some other parts of the country where, people had not got the voting machines. Many of them were faulty, and so voting went on in other parts of the country, and that is something that the opposition members have condemned. We've also seen a statement from the Electoral Commission condemning the acts of vandalism that were carried out in some of these polling stations and attacks against some of their staff. They've said they have formed a committee that's going to investigate these acts and ensure that all the perpetrators are brought to justice. Beatrice?
And Chris, what's been the response from the DRC authorities to those plans by a section of the opposition to stage protests over the way the voting was carried out?
So we haven't heard any official reaction from the governor of Kinshasa, Gentini Gobila, who was, given this letter by the 5 opposition candidates asking, to authorize them to hold this protest next Wednesday. But from some security analysts I've been speaking to are saying it's very highly unlikely that they will be granted permission, because, elections in the DRC are highly emotive events. These protests that normally start out are described as peaceful end up turning violent, because there are very many people who are angry at the conduct of the elections. They're saying that the Electoral Commission was trying to rig this election in favor of the incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi. So it's very unlikely that they will be granted permission. But the opposition members are determined to go ahead and hold this protest despite the response from the governor of Kinshasa. So we're waiting to see how things will turn out next Wednesday. Beatrice?